Zack is a 21-year-old online coach. He owns a company called Zack Southall Fitness, where he helps men torch body fat and gain confidence. Zack has endless amounts of knowledge for a 21-year-old who's only been in the space 2 years, but he is growing quickly and he's becoming a well-known name within this space. Zack is going to share some key tricks and valuable lessons he's learned as an entrepreneur, but also as an online coach in helping these men lose body fat and have better lifestyles day to day. For those who don't know, Zack and I are good friends, and we've been good friends for a while, but Zack started his business a year and a half ago now.
Coming up to 2 years now, yeah.
As an online coach, and has been massively successful. And I know a lot of people watching the podcast would like to become online coaches or tailor their business to what you're doing and the way you go about things. And you've been a massive success. So first off, I just want to ask, why did you become an online coach?
Yeah, good question. Firstly, thank you for the kind intro, mate. My head's inflating. I'll give you the honest answer around online coaching. So where I first fell into it, I was doing a little bit of personal training in just like a local studio in the town next sort of near uni. I did that purely because it was an incredible hourly rate. Like that was kind of how I fell into it. I quite liked the gym. Like I was pretty sporty and it just seemed a natural job to do. It worked well. The problem was then that I broke my wrist. Remember when I did that? And it was just it was a whole nightmare. It was like years on it. But I then obviously couldn't work in the gym for a month, and I was kind of like, well, I've got no money coming in now. And I then came across some people online, we'll talk about Adam later, I'm sure, who kind of helped me transition online. And again, I'll be fully honest, and a lot of coaches out there won't admit it, it was money driven initially, because it can be very lucrative if you know what you're doing. There's a lot of money in the trade. But I'd say as soon as I really got into online coaching, and started kind of delving into a bit more of the coaching science and got a bit more practice at my trade, that's when I really did start to fall in love with the art of coaching, and I think that has just kind of grown ever since. So yeah, it definitely was money driven initially, but we've discovered a bit of a passion along the way, which is cool.
Yeah, you talked about PTing before, and this is something obviously we've discussed off camera, just going out for dinner and drinks and stuff, but you weren't that big of a fan of PTing. You liked working, but you were more wanting to get online quickly when you found out about it. What would you say were the negatives of PTing and the positives of PTing?
Yeah, PTing is great in the initial instance because it's very social. You get to meet some cool people. The problems that come with PT is that, especially as a young person getting into the industry, you get walked over a lot, and you kind of end up bending over backwards for everyone else, and it's not actually massively fulfilling when you're, quite frankly, turning up to take a load of money off somebody just to stand next to them and count their reps, and stuff like that. It's not actually massively fulfilling. And the thing for me was that I remember when I had that month off of the gym and started my online stuff, I obviously had been PTing prior. I had a couple of clients working in the gym. I left for a month and came back and resumed the PT sessions, and all of the clients had progressed more in that month where I hadn't been there compared to, I felt like, the 2-3 months I'd had them. And I kind of started to realise, right, I think if I just am working for the money here, I'm never going to be driven to go and actually do more and improve and develop. Whereas actually when it came to the online side of things, when I first got, and I'm sure again we'll talk about Rob and Stu and Brad later on, like my kind of original 3 best clients, actually being able to create a change in someone's life, when you can do that and be responsible for someone's life having a drastic improvement, that is the most fulfilling thing in the world. Like I always say to people, if I didn't need a wage, I'd do it for free. It was just absolutely immense. So I think it took a bit of time to discover what I really wanted out of the job. And don't get me wrong, money's nice. Everyone likes money.
Of course.
But the fact that I get to wake up every day now and just do work that I enjoy, work that's fulfilling, and I'm excited to spring out of bed, you just can't beat that. So it was never going to last for long in PT because I was purely just turning up for an hourly wage. Yeah.
One thing that always sort of stuck out to me from early on was you went with a business coach pretty quickly. I'd say not straight away, but maybe a month in.
Yeah.
You were with Adam, and he's an elite business coach, and he's taken you and his team to great heights, obviously with a lot of hard work from yourself. And what would you advise someone in terms of if they're looking for a business coach? Because this is a mentor in a way, because this is something you always say to me is get one. It's the best thing you've ever done. But if someone's looking now and listening to this and wondering, I'm a bit on edge, should I do it? Should I invest the money? What would you recommend to them?
I think with this sort of stuff, you've always got to look at And I think the tricky thing for people is that it costs money, right? And when you're in the initial stages of a business and you haven't got a big pool of money sat there, it can be scary to go and invest a load of money in a mentor, right? You're thinking, oh, it might cost me £1,000, £2,000, £3,000, £4,000, but at the same time, you've got to look at like what's the cost of you not doing it, right? What's the cost of in 12 months' time your business is still only pulling in £500 a month and you're only just covering your outgoings? You know, when you could potentially be looking at earning 50, 60, 70, £80,000 by the end of the year because you've got someone there to fast track that progress. Your cost isn't the £3,000, the £5,000 on the mentorship. The cost for you is the fact that you're not earning the bigger money down the end of the line. And again, there is a lot more to it than the money. Obviously, it comes from the fulfillment and the enjoyment for the job. But at the same time, you've got to look at, right, if I want to get somewhere fast, there's going to be people who have been there, lived it, breathed it, made the mistakes, and can now guide me through those potholes and guide me down the right way. And it just means that ultimately you can just save yourself so much stress and so much aggro, because every time you've got a problem, you turn around and go, when this happened to you, what did you do? They go, I did this. You replicate that, and 9 times out of 10 you fix the problem. So it just means that you get there so much quicker, you avoid all the mistakes, and yeah, generally it's just been, like I said to you before, it's been one of the best things I've ever done. I would never have been able to achieve what I've done so far just trying to figure it out on my own, Googling random stuff. It just would never happen like that.
So what they do is kind of just like provide you the structure that you follow, a few lessons they've learned. Because obviously Adam has been very successful in this space, and so has his team. So they're sort of providing you the structure, how to run payment systems, things like that. Am I right?
Yeah.
Sort of like teach you all the behind the scenes stuff, which all the, not the boring stuff as well, but like the stuff which is you don't really think about when you think about starting a business, if that makes sense. And stuff which people skip over. They're teaching you all the behind the scenes stuff and how to excel your business and grow properly, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's where I definitely chose the right person in Adam and his team. So again, there might be some PTs and coaches watching who have been targeted by these sorts of mentors and stuff before, and I think it's always good to look at what is this mentor's specialty, right? Because there are other names out there for mentors that take coaches who have already established businesses who want to really become household names, and there are people like Adam who take people from absolute zero, from scratch, no idea what they're doing, to being able to basically get out of their other jobs and do it full time. And that's exactly what Adam and his team do. So it's got a nice phased approach to it where, like you say, in that initial phase, it's like, right, how on earth do I take payments from people? Because when I was PTing, I was waiting for bank transfers, but then, like I said, I hate saying you get walked over a little bit in PT, but at the same time, I was 19 at the time, and I'm asking these people for a couple £100 a month, and I'm like, can you please bank transfer me, please? I need to pay my rent. And they're also kind of like, they've got busy lives, they don't kind of see it as that important, so you end up getting your payments 3 to 4 days late from clients. You're worrying about how you're going to cover your outgoings, whereas I got taught from day one with working with Adam, it's like, right, set up with a payment system that does direct debits, and now my payments just go through, and they just do themselves, and if they fail, I get an email and I can chat to clients about getting them sorted. But it's those little things, like you say, that get you set up, and it's the one-time things at the start that you need to set up. But then also, once you've got those things out of the way, we're now looking at, right, how do I market effectively? How do I actually get on the phone with people and actually sign people up? And then actually, how do I create amazing results, right? Because we've spoke about this a lot, where business becomes a lot easier when you're genuinely just really good at what you do. And I've actually got some slides prepared for a presentation I'm doing this weekend at Adam's event, where I'm going to talk about some of this stuff. But you can now look at my current client base now. 64% of our current clients, you can trace a line of referrals back to the first good result. All of it just sprung off the back of that, and it made my life so much easier. But I never knew how to coach until I joined up with Adam, and learn off people like Nathan, like Jake, like Sam. So it's really got to be looking at what skills do you lack, and if you are an established coach and you can get an amazing result and you've got a well-established business already, maybe the pathway that I went down won't be the right pathway for you. Maybe you need somebody who can just teach you how to turn the turbos on with scaling a business. But for me, I needed everything from basically ground zero. Otherwise, you're almost sort of pissing in the wind with trying to do one thing, trying to do another, and you have no idea what that direction really looks like and what your next steps are. To have someone map that out for you and make that incredibly clear, so you always know what the next 2 steps ahead of you are, is amazing. And it's something you can also transfer into fitness coaching as well, is that we obviously want to have that big end goal in the future. Like a lot of the guys, they want the 6 packs and they want the biceps the size of Brighton down the end of the line. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that time, and it can be quite overwhelming. I just hit the plant. It can be quite overwhelming thinking about there is so much work to do in that time. There's so much that needs to be done. But if you can understand what the end of week 1 should look like, what the end of week 4 should look like, what the end of week 8 should look like, you at least know that when you're getting to those stages, you can tell whether you're on track or not. And if you're not, you can pivot and you can adjust, and you're not kind of sat there thinking, oh my days, it's never going to happen, you know?
Obviously, I think when you started up, correct me if I'm wrong, you were sort of just like a men's online coach is what you specialize in. Now you're specializing in fat loss for men. And I think that's really big, because I think there's a lot of people from COVID and, you know, just having a bit of a sedentary lifestyle who are packing on a lot of weight and have lost that confidence. And what I've seen from, you know, following you on Instagram and watching your clients on Instagram is these guys just look like they've got a new life after they've had the results. They look happy. You know, some have started fitness accounts. Rob, who we'll touch on later, works for you now. Yeah. And it's just like that's such like a nice thing to watch, how these people's lives sort of do a 360 just by you know, gymming and a few lifestyle changes and nutrition changes, and that's huge. What are some common challenges which you found with men who are trying to lose fat, and like how would you address these problems when they come to you?
Common problems. I'd say there's always going to be a thing around like a lack of knowledge, right? I think that typically with the guys that I tend to work with, they tend to be early 30s, late 20s, that kind of thing. There's always this assumption that more training and training harder and just spending more time exercising is going to be the thing that potentially helps you lose weight, helps you get in shape. And I think that's a very outdated way of thinking. And for me, like, I feel like the biggest part of my job is now, how do I remove friction? How do I make this as easy as possible for a client? And don't get me wrong, there are certain clients of mine who just love training. And I'm like, cool, we can get you in the gym 6-7 days a week if you want. That's fine. But if you're someone who genuinely doesn't like the gym, they don't like exercising, they don't like doing this stuff, it's not going to be realistic to expect somebody to go and train 6-7 days a week and be able to bring themselves into an environment that they're not happy in. So for me, it's now about like, if that's not the way for them, how do we now create an approach that actually works for this individual? And that's where I think a lot of people, a lot of coaches and PTs out there say that their training is tailored and personalized, when I can tell you now it's not the case. You know, for 99% of people, it's not. They're just, you know, they haven't really got that ability to kind of generally tailor things. But the biggest challenge then comes from, how do we create a process that works for this individual? And that lack of knowledge makes it virtually impossible for the individual to do it on their own, because they only know one way. It's typically, I need to start going to the gym every single day, smash the gym for 2 hours, and then they think that, you know, cut out all the junk food, live off salads. Yeah, I mean, you will lose weight in the short term, but you're going to bounce back incredibly hard and go the other way. As soon as you have a terrible day at work and, you know, you need some sort of comfort, you're not going to be able to stick to that process long term. Yeah. So it's then, the big challenge, like I said, I've probably repeated myself twice now, but the challenge is understanding that for that individual, how do I make this process work for me when they don't know any other way? And that's the biggest shift I find that we have to work on.
Sammy, who I had on the podcast, performance nutritionist, she was awesome when we were talking about stuff like that. And she said, basically what you just said there is you strip everything back, you go to chicken, broccoli, rice, salad. People just lose motivation after like a week and a half, and then they fall back to their old habits. She said what she looks at doing is, if you're going to get that takeaway, let's make some smarter choices in getting that takeaway. Let's get some veg. Let's change the battered stuff to this. Let's get a lean meat sauce, blah, blah, blah. And she says that's how she sort of has her success, is not by trying to drastically change things, because people don't want to do that. People don't want to just eat salad all day. People want to enjoy themselves. People want to be able to eat out. What's your view on what you guys do? And I know it's quite similar from our discussions on being able to be like, if you want that takeaway, get it, but make sure let's make a smarter choice on this. What's your view on that?
Yeah, no, very similar. And I think that's definitely the approach to take. I look at that in a similar way of, definitely, can we, swap the chips for vegetables, get a side salad instead of your fries, or instead of, like, say, the battered meat, it's like, can we get something a bit leaner? Those are definitely the important considerations. But what I also like to look at is, how can we look at potentially being a bit more proactive as opposed to reactive, rather than turning up at the restaurant or turning up at the takeaway trying to then decide, like, where can I make a smarter choice? It's like, can we look at this over a 4 to 5 day period as opposed to just like one meal kind of thing? So if we know we've got like the trip to the restaurant on Friday, or we've got family coming over for a takeaway on Friday, it's like, can we do something on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday to almost kind of combat the potential, I hate saying damage, because it probably gives off the wrong kind of vibe on that, but can we use Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to kind of create a bit of a buffer for ourselves, knowing that we've got a bit more of a calorie dense evening coming on Friday, for example, and put ourselves in that bit of a better position. So even if you did want to go and, not swap your chips for a side salad, like you can almost do the work in the days leading up and the days after to kind of compensate for those extra calories on a Friday night, for example. So that's the way I try and tend to look at it, is like, can we look at this with a bit of a zoomed out lens and see where we can make those adjustments, so that actually if you do just want to enjoy yourself and not think about it, then you've got the license to do so. But you've got to make that choice beforehand. I think the problem we tend to see with a lot of guys is that they go and do the takeaway on the Friday night, then they feel guilty, and then spend the next 3-4 days restricting themselves to high health because they feel like they've got to a point of failure. Whereas actually, if the takeaway was part of the grand plan at the start of the week, then actually that takeaway is never going to be a failure. You're never going to feel the need to punish yourself in the following days, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely agree. I think another thing I was going to touch on was staying consistent. And this is huge. Like, I struggle staying consistent in like a lot of aspects, but it's something I'm getting a lot better with just from building discipline. And what I see with your clients is a lot of them, and I can't speak for all of them because I don't know all of them, but from what I've seen, they're all really consistent in what they do. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to guess that's down to them, but it's also down to what you and Rob do. Is there anything in particular that you guys sort of try and tailor into your training to keep them consistent, whether that's dropping in messages, doing check-ins, like questionnaires? Obviously, I've never been a part of your team, so I'm not sure the behind-the-scenes stuff.
Yeah.
But what type of stuff do you guys do to keep them consistent? Obviously, it comes from themselves, but in terms of your end, what do you guys do?
Yeah, so obviously we have the typical stuff, like obviously we run like weekly check-ins and things like that, and make sure that we're regularly reviewing progress first and foremost. Because I think, how do I go down this in the way that it makes sense? I think a lot of guys will, like we said earlier, they struggle to see what the shorter term milestones look like between where they are now and the dream end result, right? So I think a big thing for us is now looking at, I think a lot of people get hung up on their failures a lot and kind of only really think about the stuff they've done wrong, but a lot of the time they don't understand what the good stuff looks like in the shorter term. So again, there's little things like on the app we use, for example, like you get a little summary screen at the end of your workout to let you know all the new personal bests you've hit, and that's massive, and a lot of the guys like that, and that takes the focus away then from, we tend to see a lot of the guys when they first join us, their mindset around the gym is, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour and a half, but what they actually do in that time isn't necessarily part of the thought process, whereas actually you can't progress from doing an hour and a half in the gym other than just going for longer. And if you want to constantly see progression, and it's the feeling of achievement, right? That's where it all stems from. If people don't feel like they're achieving stuff in the short term, they're not going to be able to stick to it long enough to get that achievement in the long term. So we need to now help people understand what a successful gym session looks like and help them understand that they have progressed from the week before, and that's what those little personal best summary screens do and stuff. And we then tend to find that people get more invested in the progress within the gym as opposed to just going to the gym. Because like I said, you can't progress from going to the gym for 90 minutes other than doing 95 minutes, 100 minutes, 105. And you're going to come to a point, if you go down that route, where you're going to have to live there. You're going to run out of options for progression. But with things like, with our lifts, with our kind of cardio and things like that, there's always performance markers we can improve on. So there's always something they can go and aim for the next week and walk out the gym feeling proud of themselves. And that's where I think the consistency comes, is that we build out a process for people and help them understand where those progression points are, and they actually walk out the gym feeling proud of themselves, and they've got something out of being in there, as opposed to having to go in there and sweat through an hour and a half just because they feel like that's the right thing to do, if you know what I mean.
So like sort of the extrinsic reward type thing, like you said, the reward system after each thing. What sort of software are you using for that?
It's called Trainerize. So it's it's like a coach to client platform thing. So we just sort of like pay a fee to have all our clients on there, and it's very well built actually, and it allows us to keep an easy track of a lot of stuff. And I think that's a big point for us, is that we want to try and keep the whole thing as simple as possible. Whilst we obviously have a lot of stuff that we have to work on, we want to make sure that everything is as frictionless as possible for the client. So everything that we could ever need to know will be stored in one place. It's really accessible and it's really easy to use, because when you're in a state where you're a bit resistant to making change, you will find any friction point you can and any reason you can find to not go and do the work. So if we can remove any issues of, I don't know how to track my workouts. I don't know what workout I should do. I don't know how often I should be going. If we can map that all out in one place, it's really, really simple. You've just then got the ability to turn up and basically look at a phone screen and know exactly what you need to do that day. And it just takes all of that thinking out of it. And you can imagine that when you've got, clients who are working maybe 9-10 hour days at work and they've got a lot of stress going on, the last thing they want to think about is when they get out of work and head to the gym, they don't want to have to decide what their workout is themselves. They don't want to have to try and figure out, oh shit, what was I lifting last week? It might have been 20 kilos, but it might have been 22. I don't know, I'll just do 20 again. It just eliminates all that risk of complacency and it just clears everything up and makes it nice and smooth and nice and frictionless. And I feel like that's a big thing for the guys, is just making it frictionless for them. Again, just adds to that feeling of they know that they can get in there and do stuff, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a chore. They can actually go and enjoy that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
In terms of like programming and stuff, and obviously this is stuff we've done at rugby, we get like hypertrophy programs, size programs, whatever our need is for rugby. Is there like a set program in terms of reps and sets which you guys are using? Obviously Rob does a lot of the programming, I think, from what you said.
Yeah.
At the moment you guys sit down together and run through it. Is there anything you do in particular for these guys in terms of losing fat, or is it just like a generic program tailored to what their needs are and what you guys do?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to fat loss, you've got to remember that fat loss overall comes from like the nutrition and lifestyle change, to be honest. Like the gym program itself and what the gym program consists of, I'd say is probably the least important thing in a fat loss journey, which a lot of people won't understand until they've been on the journey or they've coached the journey. The program itself, we just now need to look at what does this individual need. So if we've got someone, for example, who is, massively overweight, we don't necessarily need to go in there and have them pumping heavy weights and, trying to get absolutely massive. We need to just build like a bit of a work capacity, would be my first thoughts. Is like, can we get them in there? And of course we want to avoid the mindset of I'm going to the gym for 60 minutes. But for me, I'm thinking, how much work can this person get through in a 60-minute period? And that would be our progression model. So we're never going to be putting them under stuff that is going to put their joints in danger. We're never going to be putting them under stresses that their body isn't able to deal with. We've got to kind of meet them where they're at and understand like, what is this person capable of, and can we just add 1% to that every time, right? So for some people, when they first start out, like say if they are really, really overweight, their joints aren't going to be in a great position to go and do things like running, to do things like jumping around. They're not going to be doing things like that. They're going to be more doing probably cardio heavy stuff, machine-based work that they can use to kind of almost get their joints to a position where they can facilitate the harder stuff. And as we kind of get that bit of a better ability, the body begins to adapt to that. We can start adding in those complexities to the point where now, obviously, Rob's been through a hell of a journey. Rob's in a great condition right now, so we've got him more on like a functional type training plan, like similar to probably sort of stuff that yourself and I do, where he's doing a bit more running, he's doing a bit more like the metabolic conditioning and things like that. But at the beginning, it was very simple stuff. Like, we just don't want to ever throw someone in at the deep end and risk injury, because ultimately the problem with injury is a lot of general population clients, as soon as they get the slightest injury, they think, right, that's me out, I can't do anything. Whereas yourself and I know, because we spent most of our time in rugby at rehab anyway, that you get an ankle injury, you've still got a right leg that can work, and you know there is benefits to that. You've got core, you've got upper body, you've got conditioning you can do. We know that because we probably quite enjoy the training side of things, and we'll find that way to make it work. But for a Gen Pop client, the second they get the slightest little niggle in an elbow or a slight achy knee or a slight lower back, they're like, whoa, I'm not doing anything. And then when that happens, you know what happens. They revert back to old habits. So again, to summarize that, because I'm going on for like ages, you just got to meet the client where they're at, understand what is the biggest priority in terms of work ons right now. And if I've got someone who is morbidly obese, I'm not trying to make a bodybuilder out of them. I'm trying to get them to a point where they can enjoy moving and being active, because that is going to be the overall thing that is going to facilitate the best result for them in terms of fat loss. And of course, we get the guys who go on to do a little bit more with the photo shoots, and they get into more that sort of bodybuilding style thing, which is fantastic. But they're not training like that from day one. They've almost got to earn the right to be able to go and do that, because if they try and do that from day one, body's going to pack in and they're not going to get nowhere.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. I think that's really, really well said. Obviously, a large portion of, the main focus of this podcast is mental health, and sort of talking about my journey and the people that come on. What I'd like to talk about is the mental health of your clients, and in terms of what I see from the outside is, I see people who are a bit lost. I see people who have sort of let themselves go in some ways, and just need a bit of guidance to put on the right track. And what I've seen from when you started and where you are now, and I touched on it earlier, is these people's lives have not just 360'd, 180, 360.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Done a full, huge change to their physical bodies, but happy body, happy mind. And I just want to ask, well, from your point of view, all these guys look so much happier, they look confident, and I think that's huge. Dealing with them on a day-to-day basis, do you see a lot of difference in when these people first come to you and they're like, Zack, I need your help, to where they are now and they're confident, they got their tops off on the beach, they're on holidays, like Stu, for example, we talked about Stu, like I think you said his goal was he wanted to be confident sort of being on holiday, and he has that now, and he has that, and that's going to bring him in a good mental space from not feeling worried about his body. But I just wanted to ask, in terms of your clients in general, from when they first joined to where they are now, do you see a huge difference mentally in sort of the way they conduct themselves?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, in my view anyway, and of course I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist or anything, but the way I view mental health and this kind of mindset side of things, I almost try and see it as like a continuum, right? Like you get kind of a middle spot where they're not really kind of either side. You get people who probably struggle with more mental health, what we would call mental health issues, where they're kind of maybe in the negative. But we also we have a big aim to try and bring people up to that kind of neutral position, but I don't necessarily want to just stop at that neutral position. So we want to almost look at, like, once we've dealt with mental health issues and done, again, without sounding like we are therapists and counsellors, because we're not, when the work that we have done helps them to get back up to that sort of neutral point, it's then looking at, right, how far into the positive can we get? I hit that plant again. How far into the positive can we get and move away from it being about mental health and it being about mental performance? Yeah, and that's something that I'm absolutely massive on. And we got, again, it comes with meeting clients where they're at on that continuum. So if we look at people like Rob, for example, where he's at now, our conversations on the day-to-day, and as much as he still, he works for me now, there are still elements where he is my client and, we do a lot of work for him. We are now looking less at mental health with Rob. We're now looking at, like, mental resilience, because he's got a lot going on in his personal life. There's a lot going on. He's got a lot to deal with work-wise, and, I won't lie, I'm quite demanding as a boss or employer, whatever you want to call it. I've got quite high standards, because ultimately what we've built in terms of Team ZSF comes from high standards. So for us, it's now looking at, where does that mental performance come from? Where's the resilience? Where is the consistency? Whereas potentially when we first started with potential other clients, it's like, right, at the moment we're feeling, am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah,
we're clean. They feel fucking miserable 6 out of the 7 days of the week. I'm like, right, can we just get to a point where we only feel miserable 5 days of the week? Then 4, then 3, then 2.
Cut it down. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and I think those things are just as important progress measures, and you can take those over to actions and behaviours as well. Like I won't name names, because again, this guy's a bit more private with kind of how he likes to do his coaching, but we've got one of the guys on at the moment who works a very stressful job, probably works more hours than anybody I know, has a family to look after, and generally developed some quite tough and challenging eating behaviours around his stress, and very much a comfort eater. And when we got to first start up, I'm talking, probably 6 days out of 7 days of the week, he would fuck his diet up the wall and go absolutely mad on food, anything he could find. Whereas now, don't get me wrong, he's no bodybuilder yet. We've still got a lot of work to do, but we're at a point now where those real big slip-up days, we're maybe getting one every 3 weeks, which, as much as in the moment when he has that big slip-up, he goes a bit, I feel terrible. But I'm like, look, we used to have 6 of these a week. We're now getting one every 3 weeks. That is a hell of an achievement. So it's just about then understanding, what does this client need to achieve to be able to feel better about themselves, and also giving them the space to be able to understand what that looks like, because it can be very difficult to understand what that looks like when you're in it. 'Cause I'm sure you can imagine yourself, like, when you're in the midst of a mental health struggle, like, you get pretty tunnel vision, right? Like you can't see external things, where for us it's just that ability to hold the space for a client and help them see with that zoomed out lens. We can actually open up a whole new perspective, and I think that's absolutely huge. Yeah.
So what I talked about on the podcast, I think with Joe, about, like, the 5 pillars of mental health, and one of them, which was the main one for both of us, was exercise, no matter how small it was. And I think it's just, you can't beat it, in my opinion. If you get it, like, for me, if people don't know me, for me, when I struggle, I doom scroll. Like, with my ADHD and my anxiety, I doom scroll. I'm on TikTok, I look at my phone, 2 hours have gone by, I'm, like, waiting for that hit of dopamine. I'm waiting. I'm like, I need it. And then it was only when I saw a video and it was like, stop doom scrolling. Like, you don't even remember what you watched 2 posts ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't remember anything I just watched, but I'm doing it. And I think it's sort of like recognizing these problems. And in exercise, for me, it can be as little as just putting my phone down, going for a walk without my phone. And it's my girlfriend who I started doing that with. And that was massive, sort of just like being able to be present in my own mind, go for a walk without my phone. And it doesn't matter how small, like the amount of exercise you do, you go back, you never feel worse than when you left.
Yeah.
Like, I've never gone for a walk without my phone and gone back and gone, you know what, I feel worse.
Yeah.
I've always felt better every single time, 10 out of 10. And I think when you just grow into it a bit more, and I spoke about this with Joe, is people get that misconception that exercise has to be tough and exercise has to be strenuous and you have to sweat and it has to be rubbish. When it's not the case, you can learn to really enjoy it. And I think that's what you've got your clients doing, is they probably had past experiences where they went to the gym, they didn't really know what they were doing and they felt a bit uncomfortable. And even I find the gym a bit like uncomfortable. You get loads of people in there, and like I've gymmed maybe like 7-8 years now, and I still get a bit like a bit on edge.
Yeah.
But then I think just tailoring them, tailoring their experience through that and getting them to enjoy it has like paid dividends, and obviously in the results that you have on your Instagram. I think that's massive as exercise in particular. In terms of keeping a positive mindset, you're someone who's a very positive guy from being around you and the way you conduct yourself day to day. You never see the problems. You can point out the problems, but you always find the solution just from getting to know you the last few years and being around. And that's something I've always admired about you. In terms of pushing that onto clients and stuff, because I'm sure like I'd be a bit skeptical going into an online coach being like, is this guy going to mug me off? Is he not? Like, he sent me a DM.
Yeah.
How do you keep a positive mindset for your clients? And that starts with you. That starts with Rob portraying yourself well to them and getting them to trust you. Is there anything in particular that you find helps in keeping that positive mindset to help them and get them through their journey? Hell of a question.
That hit me. Yeah, there's a lot to it, and I think the first thing for me is the problem that they're presenting isn't always the real problem. And that's what I think one of the biggest things I've learned as a coach over the last little while is that the first problem that someone presents is often a smokescreen for something else. So for me, I think the biggest thing that I like to do, and it's maybe not necessarily something that someone watching can kind of go and just apply on their own, but I will just sit and hold space, right? As opposed to me coming in and going, right, what's wrong? And you go, I'm stressed. And I come out with all these solutions of like, go for a walk, or I don't know, get a stress ball, chucking shit at the wall, hoping it sticks, quite frankly. I think the biggest thing for me is just to sit there and listen. And this is really ironic now in my own mind, because it does come from a position of you always hear, if you're struggling, talk to somebody. And I am the worst in the world at that. I'm absolutely dreadful. Like, I will wait until I feel like the world is crumbling around me, and then I'll go, please, I need help. And I'll sit in the corner quietly and try and whisper to someone, can you just give me a hand? But the ability to just give someone that space to be able to unload this stuff. And it's tough when you're first getting into coaching to not take that negative stress in as well. That's the tough bit. You've got to find a balance between, I'm now not taking the stress away from the client, I'm just giving them the opportunity to be able to get it out in the open. You'll often find that when someone has that space to talk into, they'll talk themselves back into the reality, and they'll uncover the actual issues themselves just by you sitting there just going, tell me a little bit more, or just actually giving them that space to speak, with no expectation of, I'm never going to get on a call with a client and say, right, by the end of this, you are going to feel absolutely fantastic. But at the same time, I'm going to ask you some questions that are going to probe a little bit deeper and help you understand a bit more about the way you're feeling. And when we can do that with a client, they can start to understand why they feel a certain way, and they understand potentially the actual reasons beneath. Like, if I give you, for an example, like, it's not something I talk about massively publicly, but I struggled with my food quite a lot over my last year at university. Obviously, we've only just finished that. And I always said to myself, it's because I'm so busy, I haven't got time to cook. So as much as I wasn't, terrible, there was times where I would make decisions that probably weren't desirable in terms of the goals I was trying to push towards. I can sit here with my hands up and own that. it was only when one of my own coaches, a lady called Jen, who's very deep into like client psychology and stuff, sat down and had a chat with me that we kind of came to this realization that I'm saying I'm not sorting my own food out, I'm getting takeaways because I'm busy, but actually it takes 8 minutes to do chicken in the air fryer, and you can chuck a bag of vegetables in the microwave while that's on, so 8-minute dinner. But I would walk 15 minutes down to Roosters or 10 minutes down to Roosters, sit there and wait for 15 minutes for it to be cooked, walk home with it and eat it, and that took up an hour, and I was doing that without a problem. So then we can then sit there and go, actually, is it a time problem or is it something else? And it was like, actually, it can't be a time problem, so I'm finding the time to do that. It then transpired that actually I was stressed out of my nut because I was trying to write a dissertation, I was trying to coach fitness clients, coach business clients, trying to keep on top of my own stuff. I was seeking comfort.
Yeah.
And the second that Jen and I uncovered that, it was like, I was like, oh my days. I could never see it before and it was so obvious.
Yeah.
But it took just Jen sitting there and letting me talk a bit more about it and start to uncover my own thought processes. But then when she kind of said to me, you're seeking comfort, I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, what foods are you typically reaching for? And I was like, well, I ran through this, and this. And she said, how many of those foods does your mum typically cook for you when you're at home? Also, you live away from home these days. Mm-hmm. And I was like, about 90% of them was stuff that I grew up eating. It was mum's cooking. It was comfortable feeding foods. And I'm like, it was just mind-blowing. Yeah. And ever since that moment, I can now, when I do get that feeling of like, oh yeah, I haven't got time, I'm just going to go and get something quickly from Sainsbury's I can put in the microwave, or I'm going to go and grab a takeaway. I sit there and I think, do I genuinely not have time right now? Or am I reaching for comfort because I'm lacking it elsewhere in my life? And I'll go, actually, what have I done today? I've been at my desk for 10 hours straight, dealing with stressful clients, dealing with stressful business clients, dealing with stressful things with tax returns and all the other sort of stressful stuff in business. Yeah, it's no wonder that I'm wanting something comfortable now because I've had a bloody hard day. And the second I realise that, I can go, okay, cool, that's fine. I need to take a couple of hours off tomorrow to give myself a bit of me time, a bit of time to de-stress, a bit of time to relax. Let me make the right decision now, and if I still want this stuff tomorrow, I can have it then. I wake up in the next morning, phone off for the morning, go for a walk, go for a gym, get stuff done, and I feel immense again. And I don't have thoughts of comfort food.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing to come from all of that is its awareness is the biggest thing to allow you to then be able to go deal with your problems yourself. Being aware of why your thought patterns work a certain way will be the key for you to be able to then go and do, what is it called? I have a little framework that I use with certain clients, like RSR, so it's like recognise, stop, replace. Yeah, so I can...
Recognise, stop, replace.
Yeah, recognise, stop, replace. So I can sit there and recognise that I'm now starting to lean towards comfort foods because I'm potentially stressed out. I can stop and go and rationalise it whilst I stop and go, okay, is this the right move? Probably not. What do I then replace it with? Okay, I'm going to go and actually have the chicken and vegetables that I have in the fridge ready to go because it is going to take 8 minutes and it's going to serve me towards my goals better. Yeah, but it takes that moment for you to stop and breathe to actually analyse your decision making, which you will never be able to do if you don't understand why you're making certain decisions, if you know what I mean.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. So another thing I wanted to touch on was your clients, and you've had some amazing clients so far, but first of all I was going to talk about Rob. Rob was your first client and he's now working alongside you, if I'm not wrong, and working for you now, which is, I think, sick. But talk about Rob and how you guys met and stuff.
Yeah, so when I first started online coaching properly and kind of obviously had started working with Adam, knew kind of what I was doing in that sense. I signed 3 clients up in the first week or 2, Rob being one of them. And yeah, we've come a hell of a long way. So where did Rob start? Rob was probably someone, like we said earlier, who lost his direction a bit, lost his way, keen sort of into like motorbikes and things like that. His problem was he drank a lot, smoked a lot, ate not very good foods in fairness, but again, probably off the back of a lot of personal struggles with relationships and things like that that happened in the past. I won't dive into it too much because obviously it's his business. Rob was at a point where, very directionless, kind of just staying still in life and not really kind of going anywhere. I think he had some family members and kind of friends who he now admits weren't really friends. They were just methods to make him feel better about himself because there was no one else, but who were into the gym, strength training, bodybuilding. Probably not the most desirable characters to be around, I'm sure he'll agree, and hopefully no one of them see this and they don't think it's them, but either way, the thing with Rob was we needed to get to a point where he actually had a bit of confidence in what he was doing, right? So he went through phases for maybe 2-3 years prior to working with me where he would do the same thing everyone else did, where they'd go to the gym and maybe do it for like 2-3 weeks, smash the living daylights out of it, and then again, just get bored because they didn't have these milestones in place, they didn't have the structures in place to be able to maintain it long term. He'd do a couple of weeks, cut out all the junk food, eat salads, maybe lose a couple of kilos, then again, get bored, lose the motivation, go back to the same stuff. So it was a bit of a yo-yo cycle on that front for quite a while. Obviously, I then started doing a little bit more on social media, came across Rob, we had a couple of conversations, and he ended up signing on. So obviously in that time we had a lot of work to do. I'll keep it brief so we're not ranting on too long, but over the first, how long it was? So he started with me in the September, and I think by February or March time, he had lost 13 kilos, got not a bad little six-pack on him as well, and just kind of totally transformed the way he was kind of operating. We obviously did the first photo shoot, which was pretty cool. Off the back of that, we then spent a bit of time doing a bit of muscle building with him, which he didn't really like, and we kind of realised maybe bulking wasn't the way forward for him. Again, it's a lot harder mentally to kind of do it right. We then shredded him back down again, did another photo shoot, and at that point, obviously, uni was starting to pick up and be quite busy for me. Client numbers had grown by this point. We're talking maybe a year or so down the line, and I did just need a little bit of help with how I was going to continue to grow, to be able to kind of obviously go and carry on building the business. I didn't want to just sit where I was until uni was finished because there was still another year to go, right? So initially Rob came on board almost like as a bit of an apprentice. So like at the time there was a lot of programming to do, which I didn't necessarily have massive time to do. So I first just got Rob basically to take programming off my hands. So he would be writing clients' training programs. I would still deal with the nutrition, the actual client management and one-to-one work with clients. He was almost just sort of behind the scenes, helping me out with that workload in terms of gym programs. It then developed a little bit more where I kind of got to a point where Rob had done the first photo shoot, kind of almost completed it and got to a point where very self-sufficient, didn't really need much coaching anymore, maybe just the odd chat every now and again around the personal stuff, the mental health stuff.
Still.
Yeah, exactly. Just a bit of a mentor there really, as opposed to needing a fitness coach. Like he's in great shape, he knows what he's doing. He didn't need me sitting there doing weekly check-ins for him and nutrition audits and things like that. So that was fine. We then started to look at right, what's Rob's next purpose? Because if we just sit here and just continually build a bit of muscle and shred again, build a bit of muscle, shred again, it's going to get boring and there's not really as much of a purpose to that. So Rob then came on board as what we would call almost like a success coach, support coach. There's a couple of terms for it in the industry where, again, he would still take care of the programming. I was doing the main bulk of the coaching, but he was almost just there, just like an extra layer of support for all our clients. For example, if I was busy, if I was driving up and down the motorway, kind of going to do events or going to see people, he was almost just on hand to answer the basic questions and just give people that little bit of extra support in case I wasn't around, maybe offer some insights from his own journey, which again led us on to the point where we started discussing, right, where do we want to take this long term? And for me, I probably wasn't necessarily ready to take on another full-time coach at that time because it was quite a big step and I didn't really know what I was doing. Got a bit of a push from Adam and Nathan to be like, right, let's just do it and we'll figure out how to manage it later. Like we'll just chuck ourselves in the deep end and we'll sink or swim, and that was quite cool. So we eventually got on the discussion of, right, let's start giving Rob one-to-one clients. Now that he's more experienced with a bit of support coaching and he's got ideas around programming, let's just make him a full-time coach, which obviously we couldn't do straight away because we needed to bring in enough money to be able to pay him and be able to take him out of the other job. So we spent a little while where he was working part-time for me, still doing his engineering job, his 9 to 5, and then got to a point where we knew that we wanted to take him out of his other job and bring him in full-time to Team ZSF at some point. But we were at a kind of stage where it was like we weren't quite bringing in enough money off his clients to be able to justify it, or for him to be able to actually kind of come afford to leave his job because he was getting paid like a fee per client at that point, if you know what I mean. We got to a point where he couldn't really handle too much more in terms of workload because he was still working his 9 to 5. He had like other commitments, and we were a bit limited. So we were just like, we had a bit of a fuck it moment, and we were just like, right, sweet, I'm going to pay him a load of money to take him out of his job. And it wasn't exactly profitable to begin with, and I was just like, we'll make it work, won't we?
Profitable now?
Yeah, profitable now. We're doing a good job.
That matters.
But we just took a bit of a sink or swim approach to it, where I was like, well, if my back's against the wall and money's going down, like I'll find a way to get money going back up so we're in the green again. And it didn't take long, and that's the way I do things. I'm just like, let's just do it and we'll figure out a way to make it work later. So we're at a point now where Rob has left his engineering job, which was very unfulfilling for him. The environment wasn't massively positive, surrounded by people who again weren't necessarily in the same sort of growth mindset that he was, to the point where now he works full time for me, coaching his own one-to-one clients in the business, has his own clients, who's doing everything with them, all their programming, their nutrition, their weekly check-ins, catch-up calls, onboarding calls, the whole lot. So he's a fully fledged coach now, and he is absolutely smashing it. I have to say, like, he is absolutely killing it. And actually, it's been quite cool for me as a bit of a next step coaching wise, because again, I feel like I've progressed in certain aspects very quickly. Like, I look at other coaches I work with sort of within the OTE who have been doing this maybe like 5-6 years, and I'm almost sort of getting to stages in certain parts of the business and stuff anyway, where I'm almost doing things that they didn't do till year 6 and 7, but I'm doing them now. Things like hiring a coach. Like, a lot of coaches won't hire more coaches for a good 5-6 years until they've had all that experience themselves. And I've had that opportunity just to accelerate things a little bit quicker. And I'm actually loving now developing Rob as a coach and almost using what I've learned in the last 2 years of coaching clients to understand that it's not about the gym program. It's about how do we create this frictionless process for somebody. It's really rewarding for me to be able to go and coach him on that and see almost there's like this cascade effect now where I'm passing my knowledge onto him and he's almost doing the job that, you know, I've been doing for the last 2 years with all the new guys that are coming in, much like how Adam built his first fitness business, then now kind of coaches and mentors fitness coaches to go and do the same. It's almost like that same cascading effect, which is really, really cool. So yeah, we're now at a point where Rob left a place that was very toxic and he's now absolutely thriving. You know, lots going on in personal life, don't get me wrong, and it's not been just an easy transition where we come out of a job. There's always a lot of risk and a lot of worry to it, but the guy's absolutely flying. And to think that it all just stemmed from, we were like, okay, cool, let's give this guy a gym program and, you know, do a bit of dieting, to the point where now, like, life, like you said, has done a complete 180, and I think a 180 probably is a bit of an understatement. He's now got purpose, he's fulfilled, you know, he's doing a job that genuinely makes him happy, he's excited for every day. You know, he's reformed his social life, and, you know, he's met a new partner and she's absolutely fantastic, and yeah, just life for him, from what I can see anyway and what he tells me, is just a million times better.
So good. One bit I love about that as well is you're promoting from within and not hiring someone who's not, in a way, bought into Team ZSF. Like, Rob was the first guy. Rob was, you know, the first one, and I'm sure you were panicking on that phone call, being like, oh yeah, let's do this. Like, it's the first call. Like, Rob was number one, and I love how that's, everything sort of stemmed from him as well. Like you said earlier, sort of like a branch out of, Rob brought this guy in, and that guy brought this guy in, and then so on and so on and so on. And now he's been able to join your team. I think that's awesome. And like, just from seeing him on your page and what he posts, like, he looks like a different bloke. You know, he's shredded. He's done those photo shoots, which I'll touch on quickly as well. As I think that's like really good. Like, not just selling point, but like motivation for people. Like, they want good, like they want to look good in a photo shoot. That's like something not many people do. Like, I've never done anything like that. I'd be like, oh yeah, I want to get shredded for that. A bit of like motivation. But I think that's awesome that you've been able to hire him. And would you do that again if there was someone right for the team, or do you think if you were to hire someone again, would you bring someone in externally, or what's your sort of thought process on that? Because it's worked amazingly so far from what we spoke about behind the scenes as well. Yeah,
I would always prefer to hire from within. And again, I get that because obviously Adam sort of hired me from within, and he's done that pretty much for his whole team. And the reason that that's so good is because, again, like I said, where Rob was number one, he's seen everything from the ground up. Like, he knows, he's been through the journey, he understands my values, my principles, he understands what we are kind of about, you know. And that's the thing, where we're not just generic, you know, chicken, rice and veg, gym program, bodybuilder coaches. Like, we've got some quite nice values and quite nice things we kind of do within the team. And ultimately, that's been built around him. Like, he's been there since day dot. Like, you know, he is just as much Mr. ZSF as I am, because he's been there from moment one. But the thing that I always tell people is that I probably wouldn't have hired another coach so early if it wasn't him. It was just a bit of he was the perfect fit. It was a perfect progression, and it was like, it just made sense. So in future, again, would I look to hire from internally? 100%. I'd love to bring someone into a coaching role who really understands what we're doing, where we're driving and where we're going. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to just hire from within for the sake of hiring from within. If the right person isn't there, then of course I'll look externally. But yeah, having someone who really is on the same wavelength as you and has really kind of bought into that vision is priceless, because I ask this guy to go and do anything, he will run through brick walls for me.
Yeah.
You know, and I have to give him so much credit for that. The amount of hard work that bloke puts in, you know, when, you know, quite frankly, if I drop the ball on something and I'm like, mate, I need you to help me out here, and it's beyond really what I'm paying him for, you can guarantee he will run through brick walls and sort me out and help me out to get to where I need to be.
Legend.
You know, that's the beauty of it, because he's benefited from the process, and he now understands the true value of it, and he can then really radiate that onto other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of your success stories you've had, and you've had some pretty good ones. Rob obviously being one of them.
Yeah.
But one which always like stood out to me was Aaron Sluggett. Is it Aaron Sluggett?
Aaron Sluggett, yeah.
So when I saw him the first time, we talked about, you brought someone new on. You know, he knew someone on your team. I think you said could be wrong.
Good friends with Brad. Yeah.
Brad, and his transformation is insane.
Yeah.
Talk about what he's done and in such a short period of time as well.
Yeah, so Aaron has dropped like 30 kilos over the space of, I think it was 11 months, he did 30 kilos in, something silly like that. I think the big thing for him was, I look back at our first call we ever had, and I saw a guy who was shy, introverted, unsure of himself. We basically went through this consult call and he was giving me like one-word answers the whole way through. It's like, you could just tell he wasn't confident enough in himself to open up, and you know, as much as weight loss is great, and you can tell he's totally transformed physically, like the change is ridiculous. The big things for me is he's now so much more confident in himself, like just the way he even comes across generally when you chat to him. You never see the guy without a smile on his face. He's always like
so good.
Buzzing for life. Like again, he's gone and kind of got himself out there, got in the gym. I'm pretty sure he's got a girlfriend now. I'm pretty sure he met her in the gym. I believe, or they're from the same gym or whatever. And yeah, you know, he's going off traveling, you know, he's now just leading a totally different life from, he was one of those examples where he kind of got bogged down in lockdown, where he worked from home, where he had a desk basically at the end of his bed, in his bedroom, still living with his sort of his mum's house, and he would basically wake up in the morning, chuck some clothes on, walk 3 feet to his desk, sit down, work from 9 till 5, go downstairs, sit on the couch for 3 hours, then go to bed again. And like, that was what life was for a long time before he kind of joined up with me. And now we've just got to this point where he's going out, he's trying new things, he's meeting new people, he's just got that more active lifestyle to him, and yeah, just like a totally different guy. And that is just so fulfilling for me, to not even just be the physical change, but just the way this guy lives his life. He is just a different person.
Yeah,
you know?
That must have done wonders for his mental health as well. Obviously, I don't know Aaron, I've never spoke to him before, but it's funny, in terms of mental health, obviously anyone can suffer from mental health problems. You don't choose them. I didn't choose mine. But it's a way of dealing with them, and I have the utmost respect for the people that are getting out of bed, changing their routine. I'm sure that was so hard for him. Obviously, never spoke to him, but that's not an easy thing to do. When that's your routine, that's what you're doing, you're walking to a desk, you're getting out of bed, you're putting clothes on, you're going back to bed. That's hard to break after a while. And the fact he's done that, and he's done so well, and I think he's got a fitness account now.
Yeah.
You know, I was looking at your Instagram, and I was just looking through, I was like, what legends. Like, that guy's life is just turned on its head, as a lot of your clients are.
Yeah.
So that's just awesome in terms of mental health, but also physical health. It comes back to the point of why I wanted to bring you on, is just to show people, get out and exercise and change these rhythms. The guys that are on your team, they're doing this. They're doing this day to day. They're disciplined. They're waking up. They're getting it done. They might not want to, but they're doing it because they're doing it for their mental health. They're doing it for their physical health. And like you said, it's changed him in terms of he's met a girl at the gym.
Yeah.
You know, got a girlfriend, that's awesome. You know, new friends, more confident. He's gone from one-word answers to, you know, a smile on his face every day. Like, that's priceless. Like, you can't put price on something like that, and you're coaching, and that's why I think it's just like so rewarding what you're doing as well. And we talked about it off camera, but when you said you do it for free, like, I do this for free. I lose money from this, and I love it. I've been doing it a short time now, but like, this is everything, like getting to meet people on this and talk about like your stories and the stories of your clients. I just think it's such like an amazing platform, and I know you're the same in what you do. Yeah.
Could I just touch on just something else just while we're on that topic that springs to mind? I think when we are looking at combining this transformation process and the physical health with the mental health side, I think the biggest thing that not enough people talk about is that I think the mental change comes from understanding that you are capable. And I think, like I say, it is very hard to break out of those habits and those routines when you are just in a place where ultimately you're getting out of bed to move 3 feet, work, eat your dinner and go to bed again. Like, that's quite a hard thing to break out of. And it can seem like such a mammoth task. But if we can now get somebody to a point where we've got this long list of things to do today for their own physical and mental health. Obviously, we phase that in, and it's not like an initial big lump of things to do, but we build that up over time. It's the ability for somebody to say, I'm going to do something, and then go and do it. And no matter what realm or what industry you work in or what area of life you're trying to apply this to, if you can do hard shit and just stick in and do things you say you're going to do, that just gives you such a better platform to go and excel elsewhere in life, right? Again, and it's we can relate that back to Rob. Obviously, I'm not trying to dive too much between clients, but I bet he would have never thought that he could have the courage to go and jump out of a job that he's been doing for 12 years had he not been through this process and understood that he was capable of so much more than he realised. He understood that he spent 6 to 8 months or however long it was nailing down a diet process, a training process, and going in and nailing it every single fucking day, quite frankly. And on moment one, that would have felt impossible. So what he's then feeling at the end of that 8 months is, I've genuinely done what I thought was impossible. So of course I can go and do other stuff. I now understand that I can turn around and say to somebody, I'm going to do this, and I will go and follow through with it, because that's the kind of person I am now.
Yeah.
You can apply that across all areas of your life, and that is just invaluable.
Yeah. I completely agree, and it comes back to a point as well, as one thing for me which I changed my mindset on was, it sounds so little, but when I was in the gym sometimes, if I was lifting heavy and I had 5 reps to do and I was really struggling, if I was on my own, I'd sometimes do 4.
Yeah.
No one can tell me no, it's in my head. But by doing that 5th and completing it and doing the extra, like you said, that just transforms into day-to-day life. It makes you more confident. You're like, I can do this, I can do this. And it's such like a minor switch. But when you program your brain to always do below what you want to do, that just mentally, like, doesn't mentally ruin you, but it does have an effect after a while. Like, it ticks over in your head, like, I'm going to read 5 pages of this book. Actually, I didn't read it in the end. That just ticks over into, I'm going to wake up. Oh, I didn't wake up, I'm having a lie-in.
Yeah.
And then that ruins your mental state. And that's one thing I found for myself, was making sure if I say something, I stick to it.
Yeah. Because ultimately, you imagine like every action that you make is a vote towards the person that you want to become, right? So we've got the person over here who you really want to be. It's the dream, ideal version of yourself, who does get up on time, who does go and do that extra rep in the gym, who does stick to their routine. And you've got the person over here who stays in bed till 10 o'clock, who doesn't go out and push themselves to achieve more. Every time you make that decision of like, oh, I won't bother today, you're putting a vote in the box for this person. Every single time you make a vote, you do an action where you go and get to the gym when you don't want to, you do the extra rep, you do your meal prep, you stick to your thing, you're putting a vote in the box for that person. And you imagine the cumulative effect of all those votes going in on either side. You can then start to see, wow, that's why I'm potentially becoming a person I don't want to become, because look at how many actions I'm voting towards this person as opposed to this person, right? And when you can start to understand that, when you start to face obstacles, and this is a big thing I see from clients as well when they get further down the journey, is that when they start to face obstacles, their perception of it is different. It goes from being, I've got an obstacle in front of me so I can't do it, to I've got an obstacle in front of me, let me figure out how I'm going to overcome it. And that's the point where clients tend to become a bit more self-sufficient, when they have that ability to know that, right, I've dealt with hard stuff before and I can figure my way around things. When they see the obstacle, they're like, right, how am I going to get myself around this and navigate it, as opposed to, Zack, I'm stuck, I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to touch on is, I know there's a lot of young people out there who want to become entrepreneurs. And obviously I've started my own clothing brand when I was 13. I've had a very entrepreneurial mindset, which has helped because of my ADHD. Now I'm better understanding myself, that's what it provides. I've done my own stuff for ages, just out of the love of doing it, and wanting to make some money and do nice things with my friends and stuff. If you could give any advice to someone who's looking to start out today with their own business, not just their own business, but maybe tailored to online coaching or just in general, obviously I'm not an online coach, and what I would like to go into is my own supplements and vitamins. If you'd give any advice from what you've learned and the lessons that you've been taught from Adam and people like that over the last 2 years, what advice would you give to someone looking to start out their own business today?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is just speak to someone who has done it and knows how to do it. And again, I will shamelessly sit here and plug, if you're a personal trainer who wants to get off the gym floor and want to go online, if you are currently in an online coaching business that's not working, get in touch with Adam Haley on Instagram and just have a chat with him, because the bloke does this day in, day out, builds businesses, builds online coaching businesses and teaches us how to do it. And it just speeds the process up so much more. And you can sit there and say, oh, I'm not paying money, like I'll figure it out myself. But you're only holding yourself back when there are genuinely people who can just take all the thinking out of it for you and give you those frameworks. I think that's just the most underrated thing. And I think it's probably, I don't know if females are the same, but I tend to see it a lot in guys where guys just won't ask for help because they think it makes them look weak. But ultimately it's about how quickly and how easily do you want to make this happen, because there are things out there that will just speed this process up for you. And if you're not taking advantage of that, then you're only doing yourself a disservice, because it has never been easier to start a business. And a lot of people will argue with that because they think there's so many people trying to do it, so it's more competitive. But the people who are using the mentors and the other tools to their advantage are going one way, and the people who aren't using these things and don't know what they're doing, they're fighting for the scraps at the bottom. Like, they're never going to get anywhere until they start to think bigger. So you need to move yourself out of that scrap at the bottom and go, right, how can I put myself in a position to go and play to win, as opposed to just clinging on for dear life hoping it works.
Yeah.
In
terms of attracting clients, and this is hard, like marketing, that's a hard skill, and obviously Adam teaches you a lot about this, but in terms of attracting new clients, what is it you do in particular which has made you guys as a team so successful? Because I know you have a lot of clients now, from obviously the point when we knew each other when you just had Rob.
Yeah.
Like, that's gone quick, and you're only on Instagram for the time being. Is there anything in particular you're doing marketing wise?
I think that the biggest thing is just being really good at what you do makes business a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
I think you can go into depth about how to do your reels better. You can go into depth about copywriting. You can go into depth about sales calls, whatever it wants to be. But ultimately, if you've got something that is valuable and you've got something that can genuinely help people, that does 99% of the work for you, okay? Because I can speak to people who read the stories. They know Rob, they know Harry, they know Brad, Aaron, Stu, whoever it might be. 90% of the marketing's done because they're like, I know Rob, I've seen him do this, and I know if Rob can do it, then I can.
So just delivering.
Yeah, delivering is the easiest thing. Of course, you do need to know how to write a good Instagram post and how to do sales calls and things like that, but you're going to make life so much easier for yourself if you genuinely have a product that is worth paying for and that people want. Like, that would be the number one thing. And of course, like, looking at the more physical things, we only really use Instagram. I probably shoot myself in the foot a little bit on that. I should diversify, but I don't really like Facebook. I don't like TikTok. I don't really have much interest in doing YouTube and things like that. So for me, it's more of an interest thing. Maybe later down the line, if we're at a bigger scale, I can employ people to do that sort of thing. But right now, like, Instagram's what I enjoy. Instagram works for us, and I'm okay at it, so that's how we kind of go about that. Just showcasing what we're good at, and people want to be part of that at the end of the day. We don't need to sit here and try and arm wrestle people over the line. If someone doesn't want to work with us, that's I can sit here and genuinely say that's their loss.
For sure. Do you have any sort of role models, not in the space but in business in general? Because I know we spoke about Alex Hormozy, and he's big for both of us, and we both read his book, and I know you follow his value equation quite religiously in what you do. Would you say there's anyone that people could look up to in terms of role models in business, but also just in day-to-day life?
Yeah, of course. So obviously you've got Alex Hormozy, again, puts out a lot of good stuff. And if you're wanting general business knowledge, that's really, really good. One person I really look up to is Tommy Mallet, who runs Mallet London. He did a podcast. There's 2 podcasts he did. One with John Joseph Borgery, so that podcast is called The British Entrepreneur, and he did one on Lewis Morgan's podcast as well, who's the guy who founded Gymshark alongside Ben Francis and then obviously split off. I would say go and listen to those 2 and have a look at basically Tommy's work rate and his attitude towards just being limitless. And that's the thing I think is massive for him, is that you can tell the bloke genuinely has such big ambitions, and he just can't see a reason why things won't work if he puts his mind to it. And he's someone who was dyslexic as hell, could barely read and write leaving school, and he probably owns and runs probably one of the biggest leading footwear brands in the world now. He's probably competing with the likes of Gucci and Balenciaga, whatever the designer names are. I don't really know them, but he's one. And then the British entrepreneur guy, John Borgery, I really like him as well. He's a bit more of a mellow character, a bit more of a chilled out guy. He shows a little bit more behind the scenes of his life and kind of what he does, and that's quite cool. who else is there? There's Mark and Curtis Tilbury, I think, are really good as well. You know, the Strike It Big, the pair, like, they're pretty good as well. They do some good podcasts. So generally I listen to a lot of like businessy stuff like that. But then there's also people like James Smith, who, as much as he is an online fitness businessman, he does just talk a lot of random shit on podcasts as well, and just do what we're doing now and just talk to interesting people.
He was at Hartbury, wasn't he?
He was at Hartbury. Yeah, obviously not when I was there, but yeah, he's really good. And yeah, I would just think like those guys are really good. And if you have any other interests, just start looking into like what people can we start to kind of identify in that space where you can just go and listen to them. And again, we see them all the time. Like I spent a lot of time after I met Ollie Marchon at PerformX, spent a lot of time listening to his stuff. I'm now, yeah, he's a really good guy. I'm now looking a lot into the other people at Marchon, like Jens, like, you know, like Max and Billy. And like, you know, I went down to Marchon and trained for the first time the other week, met a few of them. And I now am very much like interested in that little realm. So I think you've always got to be diverse with it and not try and like, you don't want to ever want anyone to be almost like a god in your eyes. But I think just looking at, you know, who are the people that I aspire to be like, who have the traits that I want and who are doing the things I want to do, and just start to look at like why, you know, what's the gap between me and them. You don't want to become them, but you need to look at like what makes them who they are, and like how do I bridge that gap between where I am now and who they are, if that is something that I want to pursue.
I think one thing, while we're on the Marchon guys, I spoke about this with Sammy because she used to work at Marchon, is especially with people that I look up to, like Hormozy, you know, Ollie Marchon that you just touched on, Chris Williamson, people like that.
Chris Williamson,
like, they're very meticulous in what they do, and they're very disciplined and resilient, and they just grind it out. If they're not feeling it, if they're having a great day, if they're having a bad day, they grind it out, they get it done. And I always naturally sort of like levitate towards people like that, just due to like having so much respect. Like, I don't know what's going on in their personal life. They could have loads of rubbish going on, but the fact is they turn up every day, they train, they do exactly what they're meant to do, they're good family guys, and they just get it done. And for me, that, like, I have the utmost respect for people like that, because it's hard. Business is hard, and I'm just starting out. Obviously I've done a few little bits, but in terms of proper business, I'm just starting out, and it's hard. There's lots of admin, there's a lot of things that go wrong, but they just put on a calm face and they just work through it. And they have months and months ahead, like what they're working on behind the scenes. If something's released today, they finished that months ago. And it's just all these interesting things which I've learned from them, which are just amazing lessons to bring into day-to-day life, which people don't see, because people see the best bits. People see the finished product. People don't see the grinding at 5 a.m. every day, 7 days a week, sorting out wage bills, sorting out taxes, doing all that.
I think we spoke about this stuff, like through uni, right? Like with the evolution of like obviously where my business went, there was probably a couple of guys at rugby and at uni who were kind of, you know, obviously the money talk comes up every now and again. I don't like to sit around shouting about how much I earn, but it was always something that people would ask. You know, sometimes I would let them know, sometimes I wouldn't, and you know, I'm sure you can remember the exact names of the people who were like, oh yeah, I'll go and do that, but never did. And it's because they only see the success stories. They see the, Zack, Tom, how much money do you earn? And you maybe give them an insight and they're like, oh wow, that's amazing. But they didn't see the fact that I had to do 7,000 words in my dissertation in the last 5 days because there was so much going on, and it was genuinely probably the most stressful few days I've had in the last few years, getting all that done. They didn't see the 3-4 a.m. finishes to then get up again at 6 to go and get my stuff done for the day for uni. And you know, people only see the highlight reels on Instagram, which are fantastic and they're great for motivation, but they're so unrealistic. You know, it's only been now in the last couple of weeks since we've really finished uni that I've been able to kind of get a bit more of a personal life back, and it's something I'm still working on massively, because the last year has been nothing but work, and that's not sustainable long term. We did it for a purpose, and I signed the contract with myself that I was going to go and do that this year to make things happen, but no one sees that. No one sees the hard stuff because you're too busy doing the hard stuff to go and show the hard stuff, if you know what I mean. And
you've just graduated now with a 2-1, didn't you? So you've graduated with a 2-1 while running I won't say how much, but a highly successful online coaching business where you deal with a lot of people, and like I see the stress it brings you. Like I've watched you do it for the last 2 years, and I like we just touched on. I think that's what people don't see is what I see, because you know I've talked to you about it, and like I'm trying to help in any way. Probably not in a lot, but like a lot of stress, and people put, like, you were playing rugby as well, and you had to drop rugby, and a good rugby player, and that must have been tough as well in order just to focus on this. Like, people don't see the sacrifices you have to make behind the scenes in terms of your social life, like in terms of going out. And one thing I also really admire is you've done all this with your business for one, but you've also graduated uni with a 2-1. Some people don't graduate with a 2-1 and all they do is lie around and do nothing all day. And that just shows the type of guy you are in terms of waking up, getting shit done, making sure everything's right with your clients, and then putting your life behind that in order to get a degree. And, you know, utmost respect to you for doing that, because that's hard to do. It's incredibly hard to do. And if someone's watching this and they've run a business and done a degree, I'm sure they can agree that's not easy at all, especially when you've got people's lives in your hand and you're trying to help people and give all your effort to them, as well as trying to maintain social life and play rugby and stuff as well. So massive respect to you.
Thanks, mate.
I'll end it on this, and I think this is huge because we spoke about this a bit, but what are your long-term goals for Team ZSF? And would you like to, we spoke about maybe moving to Dubai at some point, and you know, these are all potential things, but what would be your long-term goals for the next 2-3 years and where you want to be?
Do you know what? This is always a tough question because I've only been doing it for 2 years and so much has changed in that time already that I try not to get too hung up on where I want to be in 10 years, because I know, give me 2 months and I'll probably have a different idea. You know, there are a lot of good things out in Dubai. There's a lot of, you know, Adam lives there, Nathan, Jake, a lot of the guys I work quite close with within Adam's company who are great to be around. I went and visited for the first time, when was it? In May, so it's about two months ago. Yeah, it was amazing and it's great, don't get me wrong, but there's also obviously, there's going to be drawbacks with everything, right? So for me, the long-term goals and aspirations, I suppose they're not even long-term. Right now, the goal is that we're trying to get Team ZSF to a place where the support system is unbreakable. Like, clients can come in and we can categorically say that, like, you know, so long as you come in and do what we ask, you're going to achieve a life-changing result. So we're always looking to upgrade the coaching and the service and whatnot. But for me personally, it's also about getting a bit of that personal time back. I've spoken to a lot of my sort of mentors about this. You know, since sort of stepping away from rugby, I've not had that kind of competitive side of me on like a sport or a performance side of things. So I'm looking to take myself out a little bit more of work over the next year and, you know, build the company to a point where actually it doesn't need me in there so much and I can step away and leave the responsibility to other people, which obviously has challenges in itself. You know, I'm going to do my first High Rocks in October, which is fantastic. We're looking at potentially putting a marathon on the cards next year. I just want to start getting back into, you know, that rhythm of competitive stuff. And ultimately, what was it that I was talking about with Joe the other day? It's ultimately, I'm now trying to build a business and build a coaching service around the life that I want to live, as opposed to having to fit my life around work. And I think the byproduct of that is that I will be so much more fulfilled and everything that we do within Team ZSF will be 10 times more effective. So we'll be able to then grow bigger, faster, and everyone will be much happier. Not that we're not happy right now, don't get me wrong, like, life is amazing. I wouldn't change a thing. But I think for us to move forward, I need to get a bit more of Zack back, as opposed to just being the workaholic, entrepreneur, uni student, doing everything he can. You know, I need to get a bit more personal stuff back. So in the short term, that's what we're looking at. Obviously, long term, we want to grow this thing really big, help as many people as possible, impact as many people as possible, and ultimately just be a driving force for change, mate. 'Cause I think there is a lot of people who are heading on a very steep downward slope, and I think it's only going to get, well, I don't want to say worse, but it's going to get more harsh for a lot of people over the coming years with AI coming through. Quite honestly, I think a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. It's a little bit scary, but
it's frightening. It's frightening.
I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to need the support that we offer. So I want to now be able to offer that on a wider scale, but never lose the quality of what we're doing right now. And if we can improve the quality compared to what we're doing right now, then I'm all for that as well.
Awesome, mate. Legend. Thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.